In the shadow of the 9th century, Rome was not the Rome of Caesar, nor the shining city of marble remembered from the empire's glory. It was a carcass of greatness, its streets overrun with decay, its palaces hollowed into fortresses, its holy city ruled not by saints, but by wolves in clerical robes. To understand why the corpse of Pope Formosus was dragged from the grave, propped upon a throne, and condemned before a gathering of bishops, one must first descend into the chaos of the time. The world called it the Saeculum Obscurum, the dark age of the papacy. Italy was torn apart by rival families, noble houses clawing for dominance, and kings whose crowns rested on papal blessing. A pope was not merely a spiritual father, but the hand that could legitimize emperors, anoint kings, and seal destinies with divine authority. And so, the papal throne became a prize of poison, one where each occupant risked betrayal, exile, or worse. Formosus himself was a man marked by ambition and curse. Born in 816 in Ostia, a coastal town near Rome, he rose swiftly in the church, a bishop whose eloquence and intelligence made him a trusted envoy. He was sent as a missionary to Bulgaria, hailed as a brilliant diplomat, but also accused of weaving plots too deep for a man of God. By the mid-860s, he was made Cardinal Bishop of Porto, one of the most powerful sees in Rome. Yet with power came enemies. When he opposed Pope John VIII, Formosus was excommunicated and accused of abandoning his diocese, of conspiring with foreign rulers to seize the papal throne. He fled, lived in exile, and lingered in the shadows of disgrace. But in the strange and shifting tides of Rome, enemies became allies, and in 891, he finally ascended to the papal throne. Pope Formosus I, but his reign was brief, haunted by the politics of empire. In those days, the papacy was entangled with the mighty Carolingian rulers, the Frankish kings of the West, and the emperors who claimed to rule the Holy Roman Empire. Formosus crowned Arnulf of Carinthia as Holy Roman Emperor, casting aside the rival Italian faction that supported Lambert of Spoleto. In doing so, he sealed his fate. When Formosus died in 896, his enemies rejoiced. He was buried quietly in the Basilica of St. Peter, his body at peace. Or so it seemed. But vengeance in Rome did not end with death. The year after his burial, the throne of Peter was seized by Pope Stephen VI, sometimes numbered 7. Stephen was a creature of the powerful Spoleto family, the very dynasty Formosus had defied. To Stephen, the corpse of Formosus was not a rotting shell, but a weapon. If he could undo Formosus's papacy, invalidate his decisions, and erase his authority, then Lambert of Spoleto's claim to the imperial crown would stand unchallenged. And so, in the chill of January 897, Rome prepared for a spectacle of horror. Word spread like a plague in the streets. The dead pope would be tried. The people gathered, half in disbelief, half in terror. Priests whispered in corners, nobles smirked at the thought of vengeance, and the poor, who had seen famine and plague, wondered if hell itself had opened in their holy city. The Basilica of St. John Lateran, the cathedral of the Pope, was transformed into a courtroom of shadows. Torches sputtered, their smoke choking the air, the scent of wax mingling with the stench of death. Bishops were summoned, compelled to sit as judges in a trial already scripted. At the center of this grotesque stage, a throne was placed not for a living man, but for a corpse. Gravediggers broke open Formosus's tomb. His body, swollen and decayed, was dragged from its resting place, stripped of its burial garments, and dressed again in papal vestments, the mitre, the pallium, the robes of his office. His bones, stiff with death, were lashed upright upon the chair, his skull lolling, his fingers curled like claws. He was dead, but in that hall of madness, he was the accused. Stephen VI entered, clad in his papal robes, but his face twisted with rage. He took the seat of judgment, his eyes locked on the corpse. The crowd murmured, horrified and fascinated. Some crossed themselves, others hid their faces. Yet none dared speak against what they saw. The trial began. A deacon was appointed to serve as the defender of the corpse. It was his duty to answer for Formosus, though the dead man's silence mocked the proceedings. Stephen's voice thundered with accusation. "Formosus, you who were bishop of Porto, You abandoned your rightful seat and dared to ascend to the throne of Peter. You conspired with Arnulf, a foreign invader, against the true emperor, Lambert of Spoleto. You polluted the church with your ambition, your treachery, your lies. The corpse gave no reply. The deacon stammered weak protests, but Stephen roared over him, veins bulging in his temples. The bishops, cowed into obedience, nodded along. It was not justice, but theater of hatred. For ours, the charges were read, shouted into the silence of death. Each word echoed, each accusation sinking into the terrified minds of those who watched. And though Formosus could not speak, the grotesque sight of his rotting body clad in holy robes seemed to mock the church itself. At last, the verdict was declared guilty. The punishment was crueler than execution, for it was meant to erase even the memory of Formosus. His papacy was declared null. Every ordination, every decree, every blessing he had given was stripped of validity. The hands of priests he had consecrated were declared unholy, the crowns he had placed upon emperors deemed worthless. But Stephen was not content with words. He ordered the corpse stripped of its sacred garments. The 3 fingers of his right hand, the fingers used to bless, were severed, cut away as the crowd gasped. The body, now desecrated husk, was dragged from the throne and thrown to the ground. Yet the rage did not end. Guards dragged the corpse through the streets of Rome, mocked, spat upon, beaten even in death. At last, it was hurled into the Tiber River, cast away like refuse, the current carrying the dead pope into oblivion. Or so they thought, for the people of Rome whispered that the river rejected him. His body washed ashore, discovered by monks, who secretly gave him burial. And with his return came a storm that would consume Stephen himself. The Cadaver Synod was more than a trial. It was a mirror of madness, a reflection of the corruption and cruelty that rotted the heart of Rome. The people who had witnessed it were not cleansed, they were scarred. For they had seen the mask of holiness torn away, revealing a church devoured by vengeance. And the consequences would be swift, bloody, and inevitable.